Fantastic. So I'm joined today by Tony, who works for Cosmos Currency Exchange. So Tony, I'll pass over to you if you'd like to tell us what it is you do and how long you've been running the business for.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for the invite, Sammie. It's nice to be on. So I'm Tony Redondo. I run Cosmos Currency Exchange. I personally have been in financial services all my working life, which in my case is 37 years. But I set up Cosmos in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And what we do is we provide currency payment services for clients. So whether you're an individual, charity, or a company, if you have a bill to pay that's not in sterling for whatever reason, because you're importing something from abroad, or you're paying an overseas remote worker, or you're liaising with an office abroad, or you've got clients abroad and you're receiving euros and dollars or whatever the amount, whatever the currency is, we can help get clients a much better deal and smooth those bumps along the road, which will otherwise be the case because it isn't as straightforward as it should be. So that's what we do.
Yeah, I guess lots of external factors, perhaps like Brexit, which would have affected what you do.
Didn't help. I'm very busy once again. It went into a bit of a lull last year. 2020 was very busy with Brexit, and it's gone busy again because I've got a case. Actually, my last phone call before meeting with yourself was a lady whose mum has just sold a property in Spain. Got an account in Spain, and the Spanish bank turned around to her after she's been a client for about 40 years to say, oh, I'm sorry, but if you want the euros to go back to a euro account in London, that's now outside the eurozone, and we now charge percentage fees. So she is looking at a €3,000 fee just for the transfer. That's before the currency exchange.
Yeah.
It's complete nonsense. So luckily I'm able to help her because we're one of the few licensed brokers with local collection accounts. So she can register with me. She then gets access to a euro account in Frankfurt in Germany, which is still inside the eurozone. And then she can just go online and move the funds from Spain to Germany at the click of a button. At most, it'll cost her €20 rather than €3,000. Yeah. And then once the funds get to Frankfurt, we'll bring them back to the UK and convert them back to sterling for her. Wow. So it's providing, but yeah, absolutely, Brexit is another. And generally, a lot of banking systems around the world, Sammie, are just not as advanced as the UK one. I know we always like to complain about the bloody banks and all the rest of it, and they don't do themselves many favours most of the time. But, imagine the scenario. If I tell you, how many clients know that 90% of business transactions in the United States are still settled by checkbook?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a true statistic.
90%.
Yeah.
The checkbook.
Yeah.
Now, I know I got a checkbook when I opened the Cosmos account 2 and a bit years ago.
Yeah.
But where it is, I have no idea because I've never used it.
Yeah, sure. I feel like that's something you just see in the films, in American films. You see them writing checks and you think, oh, it's just a prop. But actually, it's...
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a normal way of life out there. So again, lots of problems with clients, British clients exporting to the United States, particularly when we first opened, because what happened was, of course, there was a lockdown. And what a lot of British clients didn't realize is they were sending invoices to the clients in the United States to pay dollars into a dollar account in London. Never even occurred to the British exporter that client in Florida or California or wherever they happen to be can't do it by online transfer. It only works within the United States.
Of course, yeah.
Now, what that client was having to do is to print off a copy of the invoice, get in a car, drive to the bank, fill out a form for the dollars to be transferred. But of course, during lockdown, the banks were shut.
Yeah.
So now what do they do? So again, we're one of the few brokers with a dollar account in New York.
Okay. Nice.
So again, those clients can now register with Cosmos. On the invoice goes out the dollar account details in New York, and that client in Arizona or Texas or Florida or wherever just does an online transfer from their account to the New York account, and we take care of the rest. So it's just practical solutions to make life as simple as it should be. You know, I work for the banks for the majority of my working life. They're very good at lots of things they do. But in the 21st century, I don't think I'm being unkind in suggesting that why does it take 5 days for a check to clear in the 21st century?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It takes 5 seconds. But by saying it takes 5 days, guess who earns interest on your money during those 5 days? Give you a clue. It's not the client.
That's the things you don't want to believe, but actually they are true. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Just touching on COVID there, then that was sort of the effects that COVID had potentially on your customers or clientele. But speaking about your experience, Tony, sort of setting the business up 2 years ago, how was the effect of COVID on yourself? Did you set up before or during COVID, or?
We set up just before.
Yeah.
6 weeks before.
Wow.
And then COVID hit, and then the first lockdown came, and we lost 90% of our revenue stream in week 6.
Sure.
Because a lot of my work at the time involved international property. And of course, with nobody able to travel or view and nothing was open, guess what happened to those property purchases and sales? They just all disappeared. So that was really tough for any business to take a 90% hit, never mind one that's 6 weeks old. So I'm not going to pretend. But the flip side of the coin is clients all of a sudden had problems in getting monies back from Europe, as we've been discussing, or from the United States, or from Canada. And we were able to facilitate those payments to help clients out. The other thing that helped from a business point of view is that, you know, I love living in Cornwall. We've been in Cornwall for 16 years. It's not me being clever, it's my wife, because all her childhood holidays were in Cornwall. So when we decided to get together and start a family, you know, Mrs. Redondo said, let's go to Cornwall. And I said, yes, Steve. But joking aside, you know, we love living in Cornwall. But pre-COVID, things like networking were really complicated. Because, you know, there is a relatively small, what makes Cornwall lovely to live in my view, is that it's quite remote. And it's not overpopulated, and there's not, you know, there's not a sort of big city feel of so many cars and buildings and people and noise and everything else. But from a business point of view, of course, it means there are the choices pre-COVID were either a small number of people that you regularly met at the local chambers of commerce or FSB events, or you had the delights of the 𝗪𝗪𝗲 up and down to Exeter.
Yep.
To try and get to the Exeters, the Plymouths, the Bristols, the Baths, the Tauntons, the Cardiffs. But as you well know, that's a good 2, 3, 4 hours each way. You know, and then of course everybody went online, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting invites to have online networking meetings with people in Australia and Canada, South Africa, and the Middle East, and the United States, and which for a business like ours obviously is wonderful, because it's just as easy for us to deal with clients out there as it is with British clients. And we have access to over 50 countries around the world. So that was really, really the best thing that happened with COVID. So it was tough times, but we got through it.
So do you have a global clientele? I'm presuming, And
the majority are British based, but I've got clients in literally all 4 corners of the world.
Wow. And then within that, do you have a particular demographic who is your best customer, for example, or, you know, your particular age group that will come to you for assistance?
It's pretty, actually, it's a lot more spread out than you'd think. It's probably the majority are above 40 years of age rather than below. In terms of volume of amount traded, because it will be the older people with equity that will be investing the equity in buying a holiday home abroad,
Yeah.
or or sending their children off to university abroad or what have you. Whereas the younger crowds, I tend to do a lot of salary payments
Okay.
and pension payments. So they might be working out in the Middle East, and then most of the salary goes back home to the UK to meet the family bills. But it's really, my best client is simple, really, Sammie. It's whoever appreciates good old-fashioned relationship-based service.
Okay. Nice.
And I think one of the things I always say to people sort of my age and above is, do you remember when bank managers were bank managers? Well, that's the kind of service we try and provide.
Okay.
Whereas, of course, if you speak to somebody your age, you would know what a real bank manager.
Yeah, not much relationship. Mine's
on.
all on here.
Exactly.
Online banking.
Exactly.
I am the bank manager.
Yeah, so that's what we do, but it's pretty varied. But really, is anybody who appreciates a personalised service rather than I have to fill in that form online, and if I get stuck, I get stuck.
Yeah. I spent some time working overseas, actually, aboard super yachts. So I was sort of paid in euros and then had that sort of thing. But I just used an app online, and then it was easy enough for what I had to do. But that's it was short-lived. That's okay. So talking about yourself and sort of how long you've been in business now. Obviously, previously you were an employee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So now being your own boss, what have you learned about yourself that's the best thing that you can take away from it?
What have I learned about myself? I think there's a lot of things that are kind of like new in theory, but it's always different actually knowing it in practice. I was an employee of various banks and brokers for 35 years in Cornwall, in London and abroad. And I thought I knew a lot about my industry, and I guess in a way I did. But what's really hit me between the eyes is just how hard self-employed people work really hard. There's a lot of talk, of course, about wellness these days and work-life balances, but self-employed people put the hours in. My goodness, I guess it's been really good for me. I've really enjoyed it from the point of view that there is no hiding place. It doesn't really matter if you enjoy doing something or not. I remember it was only 2 years ago that I ever recorded my first ever podcast.
Okay, cool.
And it came from a friend of a friend. And I said to this lady, look, Liz, one of my hobbies is photography, and one of the reasons for that is that I'm very comfortable behind the camera, not in front of it, And she laughed and she said, "No, you'll be fine, you'll be fine." And luckily she was so laid back and so lovely that, it all went well. But I found it a really good medium to get, your message across.
Yeah.
But really is, as an employee, you might have the luxury of saying, give it to somebody else. I don't want to do that. Thank you. That's way outside my comfort zone. When you run your own business, if you want to, if you want it to work, it needs to be done. That's it.
Of course. And then previous to our virtual meeting on here, I took a look at website. Are you currently updating your website, or do you rely on that quite heavily? Yeah. Yes,
very much so. Yeah. So I designed my original website on one of these drop and drag platforms. And it was functional, and it's worked for 2 years, but it wasn't really fit for purpose. It didn't really explain the difference of using Cosmos.
Yes.
It explained what we did, but that's pretty obvious from the name of the company.
Yep.
It didn't really explain what's different about us, because the world is not short of currency brokers. There's hundreds of banks out there. There's apps like you used when you worked abroad. There's plenty of brokers up in London and elsewhere. But Cosmos is a bit different in that there isn't one size fits all.
Yep.
Every client gets a discovery session where we find out what they're looking at doing and the time frame they're looking at doing it in, so that we can then tailor make a solution for them.
Right.
And that includes monitoring the markets. So, you're getting paid in dollars from running a yacht up in the Caribbean or something. You tell me I'm going to get X dollars on this date and I need the pounds to pay the mortgage and the rent or whatever it is on this date. You can then get on with your life. And then our job is to monitor the market. So when the dollar's strongest against the pound, we can phone you and say, Sammie, it's a good time because, the rates are good at the moment, so that you get the most out of it. And that is not, however clever the algorithm, and technology these days is incredibly advanced. I mean, incredibly advanced what it does. But it's pretty hard to talk to an algorithm. So hopefully a little bit easier to talk to another human being.
My husband does that when we go on holiday. He's got the Revolut app, so he'll look at it. We'll monitor it a few days before and see if it's gone up or gone down. He'll just no, we're literally getting a couple more pounds here. It's
that's right. An extra half a beer.
yeah, pretty much. Oh, fantastic. Well, hopefully your website will be ready soon, and then hopefully that will drive some more traffic your way, and hopefully get you some more customers. That's an exciting time.
We hope it'll go live on Friday.
Oh, nice.
We're hoping it will go live on Friday. It's just been tested at the moment because Friday is our 2nd anniversary.
Oh, congratulations!
We actually started trading on the 1st of July 2020.
Okay.
So that'll be good. Hopefully make it to year 2 and beyond.
You're very close. You're very close.